Isolating a subject on a pure white background makes compositing the subject easy, but it can be hard to get right in camera. In this episode of House of Hacks, we'll look at how to use the histogram to get the perfect exposure in this scenario. Hi makers, builders, and photographers, Harley here. The histogram is an important tool to see the actual exposure of an image. This video is one in a series about working with the histogram. The others can be found in this playlist. And if you're interested in all my photography related videos, they can be found in this other playlist. In this episode, we'll look at using the histogram to isolate a subject on a white background. In general, having a clipped regions in an image is a bad thing. It means you have lost details. However, to isolate on white, you really do want the background to clip. When the background is clipped, all the values are the same maximum value, and this makes it easy to take out. However, you don't want the subject to clip at all. If the subject is wearing white, this might be a bit of a challenge, but it's pretty easy to see on the histogram. Here's a schematic overhead diagram of how to set up your shot. In this setup, there are basically two things you're exposing independently from each other. The background, which is exposed by two lights focused on it, and the subject, and that's exposed by these lights in front. First, set the camera to manual mode and the settings to the exposure you want to use for your subject. Since we're using studio lighting, we'll adjust the lights to match the exposure settings on the camera. I'm using ISO 100, f11, and a shutter speed of 1/125th of a second. Now that the camera is locked down and the exposure won't move on us, we'll start with the background exposure. Here's an image of just the background with its histogram. The idea is to adjust the exposure of the background until it just barely starts to clip. If it's too much, we'll get excess light reflected off the background and will create a soft halo-like glare around the edges of our subject. In this case, we need to increase the light output just a little bit at a time until it's all blown out here on the right side of the histogram. If your starting image already has the background blown out, reduce the light until it's not clipping, then bump it up until it's just enough to clip. Now we place the model in the image. First, we want to make sure the model is far enough away from the background. Too close and the light will bounce off the background and flare around the subject. A good starting point is 5 to 6 feet from the background. Now we start adjusting the front lights to expose the subject. You can see this darker area of the histogram is the model. To get the exposure we want on the model, we simply adjust the remaining lights to get this area of the histogram to be how we want it without it going up into the far right side of the histogram. Using a light meter can make this a quick and easy job since we know we want f11 at ISO 100. If we put the model in white, we can see how the histogram changes. This is an example of a good exposure. This bump is the white on the model, and then we have a dip before the area of clipping. Since we have an area here with little information, we can be confident the white on our subject is separate from the blown out white in the background. In conclusion, I'd love to hear in the comments below about how much you've actually used the histogram in the past. And if you have used it, how has it helped you? If this is your first time here at House of Hacks, welcome. I'm glad you're here, and we'd love to have you subscribe. Through these videos, I hope to inspire, educate, and inform makers in their creative endeavors. Usually, this involves various physical media like wood, metal, electronics, photographs, and other types of materials. Thanks for joining me on our creative journey. So subscribe and I'll see you again in the next video. Now go make something. It doesn't have to be perfect, just have fun.